So, hello to everyone who's watching this. Welcome back to another episode of the sort of Fresh Air Films and Media film release series that we're doing. A series of kind of behind the scenes interviews with the cast of previous films. And very excited today to be joined with my old team from the film Between the Divide, which was filmed back in 2017, which feels like a very long time ago now. As I'm sure you'll all agree, post-lockdown, or still during lockdown. So, just to introduce everyone. So, obviously, myself, Alastair Railton, writer-director of the film. I have Francesca Louise White here, who played the character of Eve. Nice to have you here, Francesca. I've got Rayanna Dibbs here, who played the character of Harriet. Nice to see you again, Rayanna. And of course, my old friend Mark Wisdom, who played the character of Nameless. So welcome back. It's great to have you guys all reunited again after so many years. And obviously, my friend Adam Sandy is kind of going to be our, what should I call you, Adam? Sort of host, yeah, host of today, to ask us a few questions about the making of Between the Divide and basically how it all came together. So, Adam, I will hand over to you now, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. Well, I thought I'd start by passing it back to you, Al, to say, do you want to give a little brief kind of overview of what the film's about, just to give a bit of context?
Yes, of course. So the film starts is you have a private investigator, a detective, Eve Fischer, who is trying to find the killer of a victim called Stan Stratford. As she's kind of unraveling the case, she encounters these two very dangerous suspects. One's called Harriet, the other called Nameless. Nameless because we never actually find out his name during the entire process. And it is through these meetings, that Eve's mind begins to unravel as her life quickly descends into a chaotic swirl of past trauma, and we start to really see who Eve Fischer is underneath the hood.
I have to say, to start off with, that I really enjoyed watching the film. I think I really like the tone of it, the kind of the darkness in it, the ambition, I think, in it. What was your kind of inspiration behind it? Where did it come from? You wrote it as well. So where did the first kind of ideas come from?
I've always really enjoyed that kind of thriller genre, particularly when it's psychological. You know, it's a bit of a head scratcher and you're trying to work out just what is going on in all of these scenes. And I think I would say that's kind of where it came from. It was I wanted a story that would entertain, that kind of would have people sort of thinking on multiple levels, and obviously with limitations of budget and stuff, it needed to be in quite an enclosed space anyway, so it was about how to adapt that into an effective working script, and yeah, I think that's kind of where I'd say it was a film written to entertain, basically.
And yeah, your second film as well at that stage, I think, like I said, one of the things that I really liked about it was kind of how big and bold it was. Obviously, you went into it trying to achieve a lot, and I think a lot was achieved throughout it. What was those kind of ideas to start with? How much of a strong visual kind of idea did you have at the start of it, and how much was that built with the cinematographer Adam Hudson?
Mm-hmm. I think so it needed to kind of reflect the complexities of the mind, so how kind of psychological it could be, and although quite simplistic in the sense of how it was filmed, it sort of worked to our advantage, because although most of the scenes are filmed in this one room, the room kind of became an embodiment of the character Eve's mind, and that she's going in and out of this room all the time and trying to unlock the secrets of her past under the guise of being this detective trying to solve this murder case. It was quite nice to be able to play with that we had that flexibility to be creative, to make things just a little bit, you know, off-peak. You know, it was we could be a little bit weird with the way we were sort of creating these scenes. They didn't always have to follow a linear format, and it was quite nice to have that freedom and flexibility, even down to sort of playing around with sort of lighting that somehow doesn't always seem very natural. It went with like a real bluish tone for the film, just to kind of highlight the unnaturalness of the film, and hopefully it kind of gives a deeper insight into kind of how complex a broken mind can be, basically.
So from there, then, obviously I've mentioned Adam, but how did you go about finding the right crew, and then on to casting as well?
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. And so that was back in the days of being a one-man producer, writer, director in those joyful days, which I'm glad I'm not doing those three roles all simultaneously these days, because that's quite a burden. Yeah, yes, and acting, of course, yes. But so I mean, essentially, the casting, these guys will be familiar. Mark will be very familiar with this style of casting that I do. It is always, read an extract from the script and then improvise a piece where you're usually in some sort of psychological, in a psychologist's office, and you're having a little discussion about an element of your past and bringing it out. And each of the three guys you see here really nailed their performances for each of these characters. So that was really nice and reassuring to have, people I felt who were going to deliver the roles with justice. That was really good to see. And then the rest, the crew, they just kind of fell into place naturally. So it was adverts, and I had a friend who did sound recording. Adam Hudson, I'd sort of met just advertising the role on Mandy. I've met him through that. Same with Anna Hillary, the makeup artist. And then the rest came from the University of Derby. There were students who came and played the AD and ACs respectively. And yeah, it was a really good and close knit team that delivered a great result at the end. So yeah.
So it was quite a small crew as well then.
Yeah, it kind of had to be. With, if you'd seen the size of this room, it was it really did have to be quite small, and it was quite horrible actually, because it was the middle of summer and it would get really, 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 really hot, as I'm sure these guys might remember the horrors of the hot room that we were all stuck in all the time. Mm-hmm.
Francesca, do you want to say what your first thoughts were when you came to the project, and kind of give an overview of your feelings of Eve?
Eve Fischer is, on the surface, very determined, single-minded, ambitious, and strong. However, underneath that, and not very far underneath that, I think it's quite a thin veneer. She has led a life of tragedy, really, trauma after trauma after trauma, struggles with mental illness. I did a lot of research into schizophrenia and how that pertains to the character and the scenario that we see in the film, and also what we don't see, what's happening in reality. And there's a duality to the character that, what we see, what the audience is seeing initially, and what is really going on, what is really happening. I think that's why the psychologist or psychiatrist audition was so good, because you don't go around shouting your problems to people. You don't tell others, really, even your friends or family, what you're really going through, especially with mental illness. It's it's internal. In a lot of cases, it's going on inside your head. You're not going to raise your hand and say, this is what's happening in every moment. Whereas if you're in therapy or you're seeking help for that, you are a lot more honest, or a lot more open. So that was initially what drew me to the character, just because how that duality and how honest you could be about the issues she's going through within that audition.
And Al, how was it coming up with the character of Eve?
Eve's a really good example of perhaps what can happen, like almost like how far can the human mind be pushed until it hits breaking point, basically.
Yeah.
I think that is kind of a real she's a real perfect case study for that, because the tragedies that have happened in her life, she's sort of been orphaned at a young age, she's had addiction problems, has
Abusive
yeah,
marriage.
yeah, yes, exactly. So
Miscarriage. There's so much trauma in this woman's life.
so when you kind of put all that together, you kind of start understanding how unstable one can be in those kind of moments. And I think yeah, putting that character in that environment, and then kind of having it about her sort of coming to terms with the actions that she's done, that she's really trying to deny. It's almost like a big weight off the shoulders afterwards, in many ways.
I think one of the main themes that we have going through the film, obviously it depends on how closely you look at it, but is being a victim and strength per se. And I think mental illness, particularly something like schizophrenia, which has been shown in so many different forms across movies, TV, there's so many representations of it. I wanted to do it justice, even if we weren't showing that aspect of the character per se, because it isn't something that she could just turn off. She wasn't treated, she hadn't been diagnosed. It's something that's she's had from a very early age. I think when we were developing the character over rehearsals, and with Harry and Nameless are a part of this schizophrenia and the psychosis and the psychotic break that she has. Yeah, so I just wanted to do it justice. I didn't want to sugarcoat it.
It's got to be one of the more interesting elements of our job in making films, that we delve into all of these different topics, and for a few months of the year you delve into that topic, and then there's another film that comes along and you discover stuff about that as well. So going forward then, Rayanna, can you talk about Harriet, please?
Yeah, Harry. I remember now, actually, I never actually got Al's permission to call her Harry. I just started introducing myself as Harry because, sorry about that. She became Harry. Harry was basically the darker side of Eve's personality. But for all intents and purposes, in terms of approaching a character and doing a job, I had to just think of her as the whole person. So that's kind of where I started from. A very, very sad, lonely, just sorry woman, really. Really sort of lacking any self-love. Just sort of found it impossible to like herself, to love others. Really damaged person. But amazingly had a bit of a sense of humour going on in the background underneath it all. Well, I found humour in it, I should say, which was interesting. A lot of her traits were traits that I think we can all relate to as human beings. We're all messed up on some level. We just don't talk about it as much as we would do perhaps playing a character on screen. So quite relatable in some sense.
I remember when I sort of pitched the character to you initially, and when we were having initial discussions, I'd kind of pushed for you to be this part of Eve's mind, this side of her personality, and I think it was you. No, in fact, it was definitely you that said this. Who said that you wanted to bring dimensions to Harriet, so that in every scene, she wasn't just there as like a prop for Eve or somebody to bounce off. It was Harry had her own agendas, was what you said. So you took every scene, and even though it didn't seem like it, even though you were playing this very sort of timid, introverted character, you still had your own goals. I love that. I love that you brought that dimension to the character, because I think without that, the Harry character would have been vastly underutilized in that sense.
I think I have forgotten that, but now that you mention it, yeah, I probably did do that. Because that sounds like me. Like, no, you must be more. Like, that sounds definitely like something I would want to bring my own agenda in. But yeah, I think you always have to bring more. It wasn't enough for me to just be, oh, well, I'm just going to sit on the sidelines along that, because I feel like you really need somebody to fight off. Like you have to have a goal. You have to be, otherwise there's no point being in the scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because it could just be Eve's film, I guess. That could be the way that a story like this goes, and it could just be Eve, and everything else is kind of a sideline. But was that kind of your thinking right from the start, Al, that you wanted it to be as much of an ensemble as possible?
Yeah, I think it kind of needed to be. I think it is an ensemble experience for sure. Even though it's depicted as a solo movie, but in some cases, Eve's character takes the back seat to Harry or Nameless, and but it's still, in a way, it is still her. It's like a manifestation of her, and I think one of the best things about, especially when we were rehearsing this, it was kind of that each of them had to kind of, with the exception of Mark and Rhea, who didn't have scenes together, but Francesca had the difficult job of taking sort of key character tropes that Mark and Rhea had developed and feeding that into her own character, so that those sort of the way the characters spoke, or certain twitches and sounds that they'd make, she was having to kind of piece the brain together with the two halves. So like, particularly a lot of the rehearsals were around understanding Mark and Rhea's interpretations, and then Francesca being able to embody both of them while still keeping a sort of Eve character there as well. So yeah, it's definitely is an ensemble experience for sure.
So I thought on from that, one of the really good things about the film was the pacing, in terms of feeding the audience and Eve kind of information as we go. And I thought, just as you were piecing something together in one section with one of the characters, then it switched kind of at a great time to the other one to build the story. So I was going to ask Al about the writing process on that. How did you manage to kind of get all those things coming together at the right points? How much of it was done in the writing? How much was done in the edit as well?
Yeah, so I mean, with it being one of the first scripts I'd written, I think it was quite a big learning experience, actually, in many ways. And whilst it was great to kind of feed the audience little bits of information and sort of tease the story out in many ways, I think, in my honest opinion, it is a film that's meant to be a feature. I think as a short or a long short, as it ended up being, it can be such a vast story that the script I'd written for it needed kind of the time to explore all those ideas, which is why the runtime ended up being like 42 minutes, which obviously is very long for a short film. But I felt that sort of really stripping it back to like a 15-minute film, you'd lose a lot of that kind of slowly revealing key details to the audience, and really exploring Eve's journey as she's kind of beginning to understand herself. I just didn't really feel I could give it justice in such a short time frame. So in the end, once writing it, after production and post production as well, it was very much a case of, right, let's just leave it in its almost entirety. Some bits did get chopped out, but and I think kind of what you're left with at the end is still a very entertaining piece, but certainly it is a long short, definitely.
Yeah, I think there's always the argument with any short, even a 5-minute short, that it could maybe do with being a bit shorter. But I didn't actually. It didn't feel like a 40-minute film to me watching it. So I guess that's a good sign. Let's get on to talk about Nameless then. Okay. Well, do you want to give an overview of Nameless, really?
Nameless is the exact opposite of the character of Harry, and personifies what, the way I saw it anyway, was a kind of an extremely emotionless way to live life, in that it was stealing a line from the film, and I may get this slightly wrong, but is it progressive change is quintessential to our evolution as a species?
Spot on.
Excellent.
Spot on.
So that, I think, sums him up as a character, in that he is all about, and this feeds into Eve as well, but he's all about changing, adapting, being logical, being cold, and completely seeing a situation for what it is, and stripping any emotion away from it, unless that emotion actually has some sort of gain from using it to maybe twist someone's viewpoint and to manipulate them. He's really all about using people and using them for his own gain, which feeds into Eve's character, in that he's, in his way, he's trying to help her. He's trying to get her through what she's dealing with. We obviously know that it's not in the best way possible at all, but then as we see the film unfold, none of it is a healthy way for her to deal with what she's going through. But almost the exact opposite of Harry completely, which I found really fascinating, in that we're literally two extremes of a character's psyche, and we got to explore them completely, which was incredible. And I've never done anything quite so similar, because of the nature of the film, you could be quite abstract with it, but also it had to be so human for the ending to work. Fascinating, but very, very extreme. And also echoing what was said by you, Francesca, that you could see how this situation might come about for people, where the scenario in the film actually happens in real life, to congratulate the writing, but you can see how this could be the viewpoint of some people. Like Nameless's way of living and his approach to life could 100% be realistic. It's an extreme, and some would argue like it's an extreme which in certain cases gets things done, because he's brutal and cold-hearted and manipulative, but effective. He's painted as this high-ranking office worker, very successful, wealthy. You can imagine that's also what Eve, the character, wanted to some degree anyway. So I think, both Harry and Nameless were kind of extremes, and neither of them good. I mean, you could cherry pick some aspects from both characters. I think that's the beauty of it, but to go completely either way was the reason why it was completely at two, like the angel and the devil, except probably in a way two devils.
The costuming and the look was kind of quite integral to the story anyway, and it showed us the state of Eve's mind actually as the story progresses, which is something that was really fun to play around with. So initially you had Nameless and Harriet, who, as the guys have said, they were two polar opposites. So Nameless is that kind of hyper masculine blue suit, all suave, all corporate, sort of that kind of look, and Harriet is much more sort of kind of like hipsterish, sort of, a bit more of an alternate kind of style, definitely a million miles away from the corporate look, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say the unshowered and washed look.
Yes.
Not washing my
true.
hands for 3 weeks.
I mean, that is dedication, which was appreciated for sure. I can't imagine that was an easy thing to do. To be fair,
I mean, it didn't feel right to have to be like having nice, clean. Because like Francesca at the time, I had long hair, so I felt like I've got to just make myself as grim as possible, which is very easy, to be honest. But I felt like that hair look. It wasn't pleasant, but I wanted to do it. Like, yeah,
for sure. So I mean, there you sort of have the two polar opposites there, and then with Francesca's character, what was really interesting was to sort of show the deterioration of her character as she descends into the chaos throughout the scene. So at the very start of the film, she's very kind of, very formal, well dressed up, looks like a very, professional detective. And you compare that to the very last scene where, she's a mess, essentially. It's...
Anna was really good for that.
Yeah,
as well.
She was.
Yeah.
She was. Absolutely.
I love Anna. You found a great MUA there in Anna. Like, she was really awesome.
She was. She also did, because Mark looked a little young back then, and I wanted him to kind of look a little bit older. She did these great prosthetics to just kind of give him the sort of lines by the eyes and things, just to bump him up a few years, which was really good. And she gave me a very nice prosthetic scar as well. No, she was a real asset.
One of my key memories, though, I will say, should I put this out there, was the whiskey. When you brought the bottle of whiskey out and we're like, yeah, you're going to shot this real whiskey. And I was like, I can't do that. No. If I do that, I'm going to be so drunk by the end of this shoot. Jesus. And then Raya suggested tea, so we used that instead. But...
yeah.
Which was great. And then I messed up again because I boiled hot tea into a glass. So, oh wait, no, that isn't going to work either. It needs to be cold. Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
I remember drinking loads of that, and just it being really good to have in your hand. It just added to the character for me. So that was great. But also, props to like trying to come up with it on like real quick, like that kind of problem solve, and a really good suggestion there. I remember I've definitely taken that on because it's such a nice little filmmaker's trick, isn't it?
Does anyone have anything else that was particularly challenging with this shoot?
I think I could think of a few, but I'm just going to jump some of the actors' memories here. I mean, so Mark, for example, had massive challenges throughout this because I'd very unkindly given him these massive long monologues that he had to kind of rehearse by heart, and that was kind of quite a challenge from that point of view. Mark, I don't know if you agree with me there. I do remember being particularly unkind with the length of those.
Well, yes, they were massive. I can't deny. But I think I had a bit of the beauty of it being kind of like he's a storyteller as well. So he's slowly revealing things and kind of manipulating. So I was able to almost do it in a sort of flow, which suited the character as well. So there was a flow to it, which made it a bit like a song. I mean, that's how I saw it anyway. And that he was in control of the scene anyway, so it was very difficult for the character of Eve to come in and break the flow because Nameless was leading. So that was the way I got around the swathes of content. But I mean, who doesn't? Well, I think who doesn't love a good bit of monologue to chew into every now and again? So I don't mind it. It's fun.
To your credit as well, it was great. What I was going to say was Raya, yours and Francesca's improv scene as well, which essentially Adam, I basically just said to them, here is a scenario. You two are in this. in this situation, roll cameras and you know what actually is in the final cut of the film was completely improvised basically. So that was really good. It was really good to explore that.
It was a challenge, actually. Not like a challenge, like it was an enjoyable challenge, but the physical aspect of that, not just in a sense of we want to make this look good, but also you're restricted to it being a mid to a close on screen. It was very, very restricted, and that was a challenge to maintain the story, but to do it in a very restrictive view, and for it to be so traumatic. It was difficult, and I think the only way we could go about it was to improv it, Francesca, wasn't it? Because we didn't really know, we just had to try things.
I think it was really helped by all the rehearsing we'd done though, with the relationship with the characters.
It's quite a pleasure actually to have a lot of rehearsals for especially a short film, because you can often go without it at all. And I mean, even for scripts as intense as this, I've seen it where people have had no rehearsal time in the slightest, and even very little contact with the director at all. I would say one of the challenges was because we did have I think there was a month or a few weeks break, or even a week it might have been, between the block of shooting. If I remember rightly, I think there was a small amount of time. There was a moment coming back on the second set of production where it was really difficult to find the intensity, like at the very early on in the day, that we left the last shoot on, and then coming back to recapture that instantly. Well, that was a challenge, and a credit to you, Al. Like, you came up to me and said, like, obviously something's not quite clicking yet, and then it just taking a moment to realize that obviously we're all there to do a great thing, and then just I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was like kind of like we had a small second just to discuss it, or to get into the headspace of it again, and re-find it. And I think that was the beauty of it, kind of it being a very intense film, but also I'd say we all were very comfortable around each other in the end, although I didn't actually get to meet you all that much, Raya, to be fair. But,
no, I'm so gutted. But I did get to see work, though. I do remember I was there. We were all there together, and you and Francesca were doing one of the one of your massive monologue. And so no, it was still great to just see you work, though. Like, I mean, we didn't have any scenes together, but it was great to just. I love watching. I mean, Francesca especially, you know, is going through this sort of roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
So interesting to watch, really. Like,
for sure,
I loved that part of it.
Yeah, but just that aspect, because we'd sort of had a lot of time to get to know each other beforehand, and I think we did have a few Skype calls as well, with all of the actors and you, Al, that we were okay to say, look, I'm not feeling it right now. Can we just remind me about when we did it on the Skype call, for example, like refinding what the intensity was then, and recapturing it, and then and being able to, on your part, Al, just be like, do you remember how you know the feelings of this moment here that we rehearsed? Bring that basically, or let's refine that kind of thing, and that really helps. And you hardly ever get it on other productions, which it's just a shame. It's such a massive part of the process, or it can be anyway. It can be a massive help.
Yeah, I said it when I was interviewed then, and I'll say it again. You're very thorough, and it's a great thing.
Thank you very much.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll say just very quickly that actually working with Alastair, having the opportunity to do all those Skype calls and rehearsals, firstly, is a bit unheard of, but secondly, just because given the nature of the script and the plot and the characters, was just so helpful. And Al was so generous with just letting us completely play and give our ideas, and not have to censor, you know, give our opinions and not censor what we really think, you know. Did really encourage a really honest environment, and you know, obviously would push back if he felt like, you know, I get that, but I would like to perhaps try this. Like, it was very free. It was a freeing environment for us all to kind of say what we felt, and everyone brought their game, I thought, as well. You know, everyone had an idea or an opinion, and a lot of directors wouldn't really what I've certainly worked with people who are just like, stop talking and just do what I've asked you to do. Whereas Alastair is really cool and just letting us kind of run with it and then scale back if we need to. So
I think it's a shame that you have directors who kind of do that, because you miss out on all the kind of ideas people bring to the table that you might not have thought about, and you need other perspectives to craft a film in its entirety anyway, and especially when it comes to acting, which is why it's so important, like, to me, that you guys made those characters your own. It was almost like, giving over ownership. They are yours. Mold them how you want to mold them, and that's so much better than just kind of being like, no, right, do that and be like that in that moment, and then it's too robotic then almost, isn't it? So
yeah. I thought, and I mean, I'm sure everyone felt the same, but I trusted everyone. Everyone brought something different to it, and I trusted everyone to do their jobs and do it well and make a great film.
Yeah.
I think it's a credit that we had the platform in order to bring our ideas, so that we all could literally just learn from each other and bring the best.
I didn't even know that was your first.
It's one of the early ones. Yeah.
Films. Yeah, I mean, you'd never have tell that at all. Like, so credit to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's
a game.
A joy.
Let's do it. Let's do a sequel.
Well, I was going to ask
Eve returns.
next, if you were to do it again, what would you do differently?
Ooh. Well, it depends. Are you talking about if I were to do the short again, what would I do differently? Or are you talking about what I might have adapted and done elsewhere?
Well, I guess you can say, you said that you wanted, there's talk that you were that it was feeling like a feature, so I guess that might be one of the things, like extend it out to be a full feature maybe. So yeah, that is what would need to happen next with this. I think I've accepted the fact that it can't be redone as a short, although it would be nice to revisit it and sort of change it based on what I've learned now, having done more films, and revisiting it and reshooting it as a short. But I think it's moved beyond that stage now. It needs that feature, it needs that expansion. So which Francesca, Ray, you guys might not know, but I have actually written a feature script of the film. It's a 2 hour film now.
Oh, cool.
2 hours 20 minutes I think, or something like that, which really takes us. So I think, Adam, sort of reflecting on your question, what would I have liked to have done differently? I think, although in some ways having it all shot in one room was quite nice on a certain level, it would have been really nice to explore Eve's life outside of these kind of what would you call them? Sort of mental prisons, if you like. So kind of really, yes, yeah. Exactly, yeah, and seeing how it is when she's around other people in the real world, and bringing in lots of different locations and sort of a bit more action and stuff like that, and that's what I took, sort of all the best things from the short, which were the kind of the real intense interactions between the characters. It took out quite a bit of the dialogue, to be fair, reverting to a lot more of the show than tell side of things, and then allowing Eve's journey to be explored in a much sort of naturally flowing sense, that we sort of see her interacting with other people and how that affects her, expanding on her backstory, what happened with her daughter, what happened with her husband, what was her life like before, how did the death of her parents affect her life, and then giving Harriet and Nameless more control to actually kind of take control of Eve in different circumstances, and really kind of push the boundaries between what is real and what is not.
Is there anything else that anyone wanted to add about their experiences on the film to kind of summarise?
I just really loved working with everyone and learning different, physical attributes or tics or certain ways of saying things, and getting to observe how each of you go about creating your characters and personifying them and bringing them into my acting. It was a fantastic acting challenge and why I got into it, really. So.
Yeah, that was really good. It was a really good experience all round. Yeah, I think that's a nice place to end there, Adam. So, Adam, thank you very much for hosting for us. Mark, Ray, Francesca, great to have you all here together again discussing this film. It's really great to speak to you all and have you all back. To those of you watching, make sure you check the description below, as the link to the Between the Divide short film will be there. So you'll be able to go and watch this film to your heart's content. So yes, thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.